Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Ben Newman. I've studied coronaviruses for the last, I think it's 25 years now. Yeah, it's like an anniversary. And I'm here to try to answer your questions based on like papers and facts and stuff, which are in scarce. They're totally abundant, but I don't know. People aren't using them as much as they should. I've got the question over here on this computer. So the question is from Kathy. Hello, Kathy. And has Dr. Newman already responded to this video? And there's a link to a video. Nope, hadn't seen it, hadn't responded to it, and yeah, there's nothing of substance in the video. So, for the longer version of that, let us go in, because I made notes. The video is a person called, let's see, it was Alex Newman, yes, who has a journalism degree and an Associate of Arts in Foreign Languages from a junior college. Yeah, so fine. These are fine things. But based on this, is an expert in foreign policy and viruses and what you should and shouldn't put into your body. Yeah. And I don't know. I find that a little bit of a stretch. But let's go on. He's interviewing in this segment somebody called Dr. Lee Merritt. And the weirdest thing is, he spells her name wrong. Most of the references to her name and her own page at her practice has two T's on the end, and he only spells it with one. So I don't know if that is to try to avoid getting taken down by YouTube censors, or if he is just very, very sloppy with everything. And those are both reasonable hypotheses based on what I saw in the video. Yeah, it's nonsense, but it was such rapid fire nonsense, and it jumped around so much that I had to slow down and make notes. I made it through 23 minutes out of the 30 minutes. If there's something amazing in the last 7, that's fine. Yeah, I don't need to know it. But there's plenty to talk about from that part. So, shall we? Okay. It starts out with what would be called a logical fallacy in most elementary school English classes, sort of the appeal to authority. He says that Dr. Lee Merritt is got this giant resume, too long to list, and part of that is that she is part of a thing called Alpha Omega Alpha, which is an honor society, medically related honor society. And she's also part of the American Association of Physicians and Surgeons. And you can't be part of those two things without some, really serious credentials. Yeah. So I looked into it. I pulled up their websites just to see what does it take to get into these groups, because there are lots of these in science, and generally what it takes is like $25 and a willingness to sign up, and you probably have to be somehow related to a field. So I would imagine you have to be related to the medical field. The criteria for Omega Alpha. You have to be a med student. That's the lowest level. You can also be a doctor, and it takes $43. Yeah, and you're good. Yeah, you are now a member. For the AAPS, if you're a med student, they'll actually let you in for free. Yeah, so both of these charge more for lifetime memberships and for full-on doctor members if you want to be able to put that little certificate behind you on the wall so everybody knows that you paid money to somebody that's really good at making certificates. That's fine. These are not qualifications. These are things that a couple of bucks can get you, yeah, if you want, whatever. Like a corn dog. But more expensive. Fine. Yeah, less nutritious. Okay. Starts off with the same fallacy that we see from a lot of the sort of conspiracy nuts out there. It is that the coronavirus causes the common cold, and everybody knows this, and it doesn't cause anything else. Yeah, which is exactly what you would think if you knew nothing about coronaviruses. So when people that study coronaviruses talk about them, will often mention the common cold virus. And what we're doing is trying to find some connection with the person that we're talking to, because people have heard of common colds, and then you can say, oh, okay, I know about this thing. That's one little tiny slice of these viruses. It's this giant family, the Coronaviridae. And they infect all kinds of things. I mean, I've helped find one that was in little baby frogs. It's a tadpole virus. Yeah. No idea what it does beyond that, but doesn't seem to kill anything. But there's this range of what coronaviruses can do. So in pigs, there's one called HEV. Sometimes that causes hemorrhaging and death in the little baby pigs. They will literally bleed out as a caused by this virus. Yeah, kind of like pig Ebola. Yeah, terrible. Oh my gosh. There's a different pig virus, PEDV, and there are a couple other coronaviruses that can potentially cause lethal diarrhea. And again, it tends to kill off the younger animals. Not universally lethal, but yeah, imagine diarrhea till you die. That's pretty severe, right? Yeah, and terrible. There's infectious bronchitis virus, the one in chickens. It does all kinds of things. You get very strange consequences in turkeys that include hemorrhage. One of the things it does is it stops all the little tiny, they're like hairs, they're called cilia, that would line your throat. And so you can't move the mucus around anymore, and bacteria get in there, and then you get secondary infections, and then all of a sudden your entire flock ends up dead. Yeah. So that's also something coronaviruses can do. There's one called MHV3, which is a personal favorite. It can turn all the blood inside of a mouse to basically coagulated blood. It basically turns their bloodstream solid. Yeah. Sets off the coagulation cascade, takes about 2 days before some version of a stroke kills them. And then once you go in, you find that, yeah, there are all these veins and arteries that are just absolutely choked with coagulated blood. Yeah, absolutely insane. The virus can do this, but that's also a coronavirus. All these things are part of what coronaviruses are, the larger world. And I think when we pick out this one that causes a common cold in people and say, yeah, that's the only thing coronaviruses are, yeah, the connection value is there, but I believe we have made the connection at this point, and now it is just kind of like misinformation fuel from the look of it, unfortunately. Yeah, because they're neat viruses, some of the ones that are a bit common coldish. It's just, it's not the norm. I don't think you can really say anything is true of all coronaviruses unless you're talking about the genome or which particular genes in which particular order you expect to find on the genome. Everything else about coronaviruses is kind of different depending on which one you're talking about. And so that's a good way to tell when somebody is blatantly incompetent and trying to shove something down your throat, basically, in an intellectual sense. If they come in with absolutes, this is what a coronavirus is, this is what it does, yeah, you know they don't know what they're talking about, and that's very much the case here. Fine. Let's see. Next note is that she doesn't appear to have any first-hand bioweapons knowledge. It's like less than you would get by reading these sort of pop science sort of speculations and conspiracy compilations. I don't get the sense that she's done anything specific ever, or maybe even read anything particularly specific. If she has, she's just not conveying it. So, all right, fine. But yeah, I don't think she knows what she's doing. Then comes the big one. All right, so she says in there that she's an old fogey. Basically, she got her med school degree in the 1970s, and I think it shows. 1970s. This is before what we would call the molecular era in biology and medicine and everything else. And you could get trained as a doctor back then, and you would not have in your little, the things that you know, any of this stuff that came later. You would have to pick up on your own some of this stuff at a later point. And the other important thing here is that she's a doctor who would specialize, an orthopedist. So like, I think sports injuries, might even do surgeries to repair a torn meniscus or rotator cuff, or I don't know. This is an area I don't know much about, but it's not virology for sure. Yeah, it's part of physiology. It's just not virology part. So, right, beware of somebody with credentials that appear to be related but are not very directly related to the thing that they're talking about, because with that you are getting definitely a non-expert opinion, And sometimes the people that have sort of tangential, I would call them credentials, often really, really want to push some particular thing to you. Yeah, they have very strong and totally unfounded beliefs that are straight out of the loony bin. Bless them. Yeah. All right. Fine. She goes on to say that the virus has a 99.991% survival rate in no study that I've ever seen. The fatality rate seems to be around 2%. That seems to be fairly average. If you've got populations that are extremely young, then it'll go down. It'll be something like 1%. But as the population as a whole, with both old people and young people, and sick people and well people, neighborhood of 2%, seems to be about where that is. Yeah, just it's where it is. All right. She's a big fan of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Oh, and the thing I didn't mention, she's part of America's Frontline Doctors, or she's affiliated with them. This is the group that came to fame. Remember there was a doctor that claimed that basically various gynecological problems are all caused by you having sex with demons that appear in your dreams, which, you know, could be, but it's not. You can kind of tell that something like that is. I don't know why I'm discussing this seriously. You can tell that something like that is not coming from science, because how would you test that hypothesis? I think that's a good way to look at it, and a good little reality check that you can go out there and apply. Like, all right, if you wanted to know this, what would the experiment be? How would you do it? Yeah, and how would you prove that a demon, which you can't show exists, appears inside of a dream, which are very hard to tell what's going on inside of a dream, and then causes some kind of reproductive tract dysfunction or illness, which in some cases is associated with particular bacteria or, I mean, it's, yeah, total lunacy. And anybody with that sort of belief and also practicing medicine, I think probably should not be practicing medicine. That's, yeah, I don't know. They may be good at some things, but that's close enough to the area where they're supposed to be competent that I would say there are probably giant gaps in knowledge, and I would not trust a person like this with. I wouldn't trust them to wash my windshield with a dirty little squeegee. Yeah, honestly, I don't think they do a very good job. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, super big fan of ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine. Then she goes on and tells you how she looked up what these things do. She got the mechanism right for one, not the other, but whatever. Also goes on to say, let's see, that vitamin D can cure all cases of the coronavirus and prevent it. There's a neat article in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, which I have open on a little tab over here. There we go. The article, which you can look at if you like, is called Sorting Out Whether Vitamin D Deficiency Raises COVID-19 Risk. In the article, they go through, there were 2 studies at the beginning where doctors sort of handpicked a very small number of people, and based on this, they thought there might be some usefulness of vitamin D. Then there were 2 larger studies that came after that. One of them found no benefit of vitamin D. Some people had it, some people did not, no benefit. The other one found that and it was much larger as well, in the group that was given vitamin D, they actually had a higher risk by just a little bit of dying from COVID-19 than the ones that didn't get vitamin D. And as you read through the thing, you get to the point where it says that vitamin D levels are associated with different levels of melanin, which basically we run onto the iceberg of coded race metaphor. And I think generally when you're looking at something and it is asking about race, so there's not really any biology behind this idea of race. This is something that is cultural, it's created in the minds of people, and it's not really based on anything. And there's like a little test of this. You know, if you could look at somebody and tell what their genes were, then you ought to be able to pick out, just by eye, somebody who'd be a good organ donor or bone marrow donor. And I would urge you not to try that in the real world because, yeah, it will not end up going well. Yeah, I don't know, you'll kill one or both of the people, most likely. It's just not a thing. Not a thing. So I think it's running into areas where we are tied up with all of the cultural stuff that goes along with this idea, but it's not. Yeah. Stuff like that makes me very wary, just because I feel like it is these sort of unconscious biases bubbling up and coming out in weird ways, and you wonder if people know they're doing it or not. Yeah, so I don't know. I'm a little torn on vitamin D. Anyway, fine. Yeah, on the vaccine, she says that the vaccine doesn't exist. She says the vaccine isn't needed because you have these treatments that don't work in very large, very well-controlled studies. Neither of these things actually works and makes you less likely to die from SARS-CoV-2. There are studies that show that they might make you more likely to die, but not less likely to die. So, yeah, these are not things that are going to help. They're just things that are cheap and available and don't do what people want them to do. Yeah. Let's see. Her main vaccine concern is for the integrity and moral turpitude of the medical profession. Yeah. So, and again, RNA wasn't discovered until 1961. She's graduating in the 70s. This is like a hot new thing. And RNA, I mean, it existed for all of biological time, probably. But, humans didn't become aware that this is a thing that definitely exists. Until then, to the point where you could actually show it. So, yeah. And so I think she doesn't understand very much about mRNA. Definitely hasn't looked at the mRNA vaccine studies that took place long ago, over 10 years ago, and right steadily up till now. Just doesn't appear to understand immunology either. She may just be rounding things off for the viewer's benefit, but I don't know. I didn't get a sense that she actually knows what she's talking about. Just the sort of sloppy way she uses some terms and refers to things. Also, in this wonderful video of lies, she says that the vaccines are creating spikes, which is true. The messenger RNA vaccine is the instructions to make a spike, hopefully in a thing called a dendritic cell. These are professional antigen-presenting cells. They're part of your immune system. Their job is to either pick up things that they have scavenged or pick up things that they are actually making themselves. And so what you're doing with this is you're trying to simulate an infection of a dendritic cell. You're putting it into our muscles, which is where you have a lot of these cells that just hang out, tissue-embedded macrophages and dendritic cells. Would be there. And so we think this is probably why these vaccines have been so successful. And they are vaccines, and they do work, and they are needed. None of what she's saying has any basis in reality. She mentions the old experiments from the 70s. I think there's like a review from 1980 or something with the cat coronavirus. And so it was found that if you vaccinate cats with one particular thing that's called a cat coronavirus, and then challenge them with a different kind of cat coronavirus that actually has quite a different spike, you can end up with a thing called antibody-dependent enhancement, where antibodies can make a thing worse. This is also something that you see, if I remember right, in dengue fever and in yellow fever. So it's a thing that can happen in humans. And it's a thing that I've been watching out for, and a lot of the people that need to know this have been watching out for all the way along. There was one paper where in one laboratory experiment, if you added just the right amount, the Goldilocks amount, and not less and not more of a particular antibody, it seemed as though there was a little bit of antibody-dependent enhancement of damage to the cell culture. And we've been looking for this, and it is just not there in the other cases, and honestly, that's great. One reason that you know it's not there is that antibody treatments, convalescent plasma, Regeneron antibody, a couple of other commercialized antibodies that I'm not even going to try to pronounce. They're almost unpronounceable. These have all been shown to work and to protect people against, to either lower the amount of virus. I think all the antibody treatments do that where they have looked. And in some cases, they've used them, what I would say is smartly, in sort of the early stage of infection, and you can reduce the likelihood of going into more severe infection and potentially protect people with those. And so if antibody-dependent enhancement was a thing, you certainly wouldn't want to be giving antibodies because it would enhance disease, not prevent it. But it's been shown in very nice big clinical trials that are actually FDA approved for emergency use authorization that this is a thing. So yeah, they work. It's the opposite of what she says, and she doesn't know what she's talking about. I think as I was looking around about it, there's a very nice article about probably why we should not be listening to this goofball. Yeah, which is something like Dr. Lee Merritt, no merit. That would be a decent title for, one of these things. Somebody has probably already got there, though. That's not very clever. Somebody else has probably got that. But yeah, from McGill University, they say Dr. Merritt may be a fine orthopedic surgeon, and I think they're just giving her the benefit of the doubt there. But when it comes to the source of COVID-19, she's a bumbling neophyte. And yeah, they saw what I saw, and I think what anybody that actually knows coronaviruses at all probably saw. This is not somebody who knows what she's talking about. This is somebody, she's recycling all the boomer memes that are out there and creating some of her own. That's her little terrible poisonous gift to the world, and I'm so sorry that it's come to that. I don't know. She's probably a person that has or had some real use and useful training, and shame to see all that go to waste used like this. But there we go. Yeah, so totally incompetent in every aspect of virology, immunology, and microbiology and molecular biology, as far as I can tell. And those are the things that she's trying to talk about. She's got very strong opinions, but they're opinions built on nothing. So there we go. I don't know. So look, I came in 10 minutes shorter than her dumb video, so maybe that's good. Thanks. That's all I've got on this thing. All the best to you, and hopefully that's a little bit that can show you how you can use to show other people how not to fall for just dumb conspiracy nonsense like this, which is all it is. Thanks very much. This has been Ask Dr. Ben.